the fact that this government hasn't cracked down on the flow of the money laundering, of money proceeds from drug trafficking, as was referred to by Matthew Salito a few minutes ago, is something that I would think the terrorists are very happy about, because that would allow them to obviously continue in their efforts. I think in the wake of 9/11, the response of this country relative to squashing of civil liberties, this assault on the Bill of Rights, the very foundation of what sets this country apart, that makes it a leader, something to, we haven't reached the ideal in terms of what we've aspired to, what the founding fathers aspired to. But I think in the wake of 9/11, we've seen an erosion of our civil liberties, and we're being asked to sacrifice them for an illusion of security. It's hard for me to put myself in the mind of a terrorist, but that concerns us as an organization. The domestic response to 9/11, the excessive secrecy, the oppression, the stifling of dissent. All of these things are concerning to us. If they hate us for our freedoms, which I don't think is the case, certainly they would rejoice over what's happening in this country. Please. Why don't you, can you come up here? I think they're
sure.
An analyst of the CIA, Michael Scheuer, who is still in place, by the way, and has anonymously published that book. I suggest you read that, because it goes into chapter and verse as to why, if you're looking at Osama bin Laden, how he feels about what's happened. Scheuer describes it as a kind of Christmas present that our president decided to invade Iraq. After all, that's what Osama bin Laden's been saying all along, that the U.S. is an imperialist, aggressive nation that hates Arabs, will invade their countries to seize oil. So we proved that when we did all that. Scheuer says that it was a kind of a Christmas present to Osama bin Laden, the kind of thing where, you sort of hope all day that maybe it would eventuate, but you really don't expect it, and lo and behold, it happened. Why do I say that? Well, the proof is in the pudding. There is a virtual war going on in Iraq now. If jihad was Osama bin Laden's purpose, he's got 1 billion Muslim fighters really geared up to fight the arch-imperialist, the United States, which has, in an unprovoked way, invaded and occupied an Arab country. So I think, to the extent you're talking about bin Laden, how he feels about this, I think he's really happy about the way it seems to be evolving. And I think probably that's enough said.
I'd just like to also close by saying that, when our generals went to Afghanistan to go after the Taliban harboring bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, getting Osama bin Laden, and these are the words right out of the general's mouth, was never a priority. And as we all know, he is still free. So next question, please. Please. Chris?
You mentioned the issue of accountability, and that the report is most likely going to say that there was an across-the-board system-wide failure rather than holding individuals responsible. Maybe a question for Mr. McGovern. Have you seen anywhere where you see that there's individual accountability, or at least accountability in certain agencies over other agencies? There was certainly the Phoenix memo, the Moussaoui investigation, which went through the Washington headquarters of the FBI, and apparently was blocked.
Right.
And so, what can you say about where accountability should lie?
Okay, what I'll say is that you're in the weeds. The president was told on August the 6th, and I quote the title of the president's daily brief item, "Bin Laden determined to strike in United States." This was just the most recent of many very serious warnings. He had a national security advisor with no experience at all in this kind of thing, who's pretty much admitted she didn't even read the file that was left behind so that she could know what was going on. They didn't, in my view, the charitable explanation is they just didn't know what to do, okay? And so what did they do? He went off on vacation, she too. The reports, don't take my word for it. See what Richard Clark says about this whole business. Hair was on fire, George Tenet's hair, Richard Clark's hair. Why was Tenet not summarily dismissed after 9/11? Well, because he almost certainly has this little piece of computer software or computer. He's got a disk on which the 12 warnings that he issued to the president between July and August of 2001 exist. In other words, the president was warned. So getting down to pinning responsibility on the CIA or the FBI, yeah, there were terrible mistakes made, but there certainly was enough evidence there to require action, some kind of action, if only to consult his advisors at the time. And for the president to say, as he did yesterday, that if there were the smallest inkling that such an attack might be, he would have moved, quote, moved heaven and earth, end quote, to prevent it. Now that's a nice rhetorical expression, but we don't want him to move heaven and earth. We just want him to talk to his advisors and figure out, should we be doing something about this? Should we alert the airline? Should we alert the airport?
One of the points that's addressed in our report, and there are several appendices in the report, but Dan Alcorn, an FOIA attorney here in town, makes the argument that the excessive secrecy, and it's gotten worse since 9/11, of the government, actually hinders the ability for us to be secure or to protect ourselves. And the simple point he makes is that not the details or the sources or the methods necessary to come up to the conclusion of the presidential daily briefing, which is held to be secret, but just the fact that bin Laden was determined to strike inside the United States could have been made public on August the 6th, over a month before, and might have had a much different effect on the alert of the agencies. Instead, it was held as some super secret, totally classified document that no one would ever be able to see except George Bush. And this sort of secrecy, I think, is exactly counterproductive to not only a democracy but to any kind of real security. And we exist in a time where our history has been buried in the national security state since 1947, actively with a huge classification bureaucracy. Even if you said, as Clinton tried to, 30 years out, documents should be released. By the time the agencies involved get done vetting them, the current volume of newly classified material would catch up. But even that's not enough. Bush administration has people going into the National Archives now and other collections reclassifying formerly declassified documents. It also passed an executive order that all the papers for the previous two presidencies now reside under the control of the current president. So he currently controls all the papers of his father's administration, and there was a battle to get those loose when he left, as well as Clinton's papers and his own. And so we exist in a time of increased secrecy, but very little democratic or citizen participation in a scenario that affects all of us on very profound levels. And I think what Ray was trying to say about terrorism is that this is exactly the wrong approach to asymmetrical warfare. This kind of violence is also used as a tactic in revolutionary situations. Castro would goad Batista. Batista would over-respond, making himself enemies and Castro friends. And if you fall into that trap in your response, I mean, the two examples I think you should look at historically are Ireland and Israel. In Ireland, when the conditions improve, when there's amelioration, when there's more representation and democratic input from people aren't hopeless anymore, they're not in despair, then the violent elements come to the negotiating table. On the other hand, if it's just a cycle of violence, you can't get out of it. And the only way to end terrorism in the world is to eventually restore justice.
So in closing, again, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the National Press Club, C-SPAN, Jules Aronson, Matthew Salito, Ray McGovern, Barry Zellman. He also made a statement. I had forgotten to mention that. We will also post his statement on our website. Again, you can visit us at www.911citizenswatch.org. Thank you very much for your attention, and please look ahead for our report, our full and comprehensive report in response to the 9/11 Commission's report being released today. Thank you very much.
Unfair scapegoating. I think it was 60 or 65 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at
You can read the September 11 Commission report on our website,